Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, I'm Jackie Cation, and you're listening to The Dork Forest. You've done it. You've chosen wisely. The website's JackieCation.com, DorkForest.com, TheDorkForest.com. JackieCation.com has everything, right? This podcast, links to my other podcast, links to my calendar for when stand-up comedy happens again, links to the merch. If you want a Ranger of the Dork Forest t-shirt, if you want any of my stand-up merchandise, there's a bunch of new merch over there. There's the old pins. There's a new challenge coin. There's a bunch of t-shirts. There's CDs. There's my DVD, and there's some video, and there's more of the information that you could deal with. Also, so that's on JackieCation.com. And there's a link on, of course, DorkForest.com to the merch page. The other thing you could do is you go to iTunes and review the show. That's always something that's supposed to help. Hi. You might be listening to the show on Pandora or Spotify or Amazon or Stitcher or some other place. Anyway, you might be just listening to it at dorkforest.com, which will also have the videos. As long as we're in COVID, as long as we're in quarantine, I am doing Zoom. I'm doing this show as also a video show. So you can go to the YouTube page and get a bunch of that. That also has a bunch of my stand-up clips on it as well. Let's do the credits. Hey, Mike Rickberg wrote and composed that song that you just heard, and he sang it with his wife, Sarah. He will sing at the end of the program his words to the Mexican hat dance. Very glamorous. Patrick Brady fixes the audio, the video. He does everything, and he really kind of keeps me sane. Loving Patrick Brady, especially in these days. And then Vilmos keeps JackieCation.com rocking and rolling, as the kids say. There are several ways to support the show. I've already mentioned reviewing the show on iTunes. You could also just tell people that you love the show. That's always something. You could repost it if it's a particular episode you enjoy. You could join the Ranger page on Facebook if you like. That's just a bunch of people who love the show, and they can riff on each other and talk about the show and dorky things that they love themselves. My Twitter, Instagram, and all things, Snapchat at Jackie Cation. If you ever want to get in touch with me, it's Jackie at JackieCation.com. That's my email address. And if you want to donate, you can just give me money, quite honestly. You can PayPal me, Jackie at JackieCation.com, or use the button on JackieCation.com or DorkForest.com, and it comes directly to me. I will use it, in this case, enormously wisely on things like shelter and food until I'm on the road again. And then, and I appreciate whatever you could send. If you want to make it monthly, if you do monthly things, you can make the PayPal thing monthly. You can also, if you don't like PayPal, you can pay me by Venmo. My Venmo is just my name, Jackie-Cation, and then a picture of me, windswept, I believe. Other than that, yeah. Bandcamp. If you've run out of episodes to watch and would like more, there are live episodes on dorkforest.bandcamp.com. And there's a bunch of episodes. There's 200 episodes before I started pre-recording. The best 17 of the horrible audio that they were are on Bandcamp. So you can listen to those for free. There's a bunch of live ones that are like $2 a piece because they cost me some money to produce. So I charge you a couple of bucks. There's also a storytelling album if you like that. So much info. Let's get into the show. Hi, Jackie Cation. How the hell are you? I'm here in the Dork Forest. Guess who's back to tell us possibly another snippet into the Revolutionary War? Gary Petersen, welcome back to the program.
It is a pleasure to return. Thank you, Jackie.
Gary Petersen is a great comic, and he has a new album out. And we don't know when this will drop. I think probably months after his album dropped. But it's called Yellow Belt Confidence, which is a great name. A great name, my friends. And Gary Petersen, Yellow Belt Confidence. Find it where you find your stand-up comedy records and listen up. Feel free to buy it. Comedy Gary P is your Instagram and Twitter and all that. The word comedy, the name Gary, the letter P, correct?
Yes.
Sweet. Okay, welcome back to the program. When we left, let's do a small recap in Dungeons and Dragons fashion. When we last left our intrepid adventurers, we were discussing the Revolutionary War, and I think Lexington and Concord had just happened. What is the date of Lexington and Concord?
That would be mid-April of 1775.
Quite some time ago, you guys. What happened in May?
May is a bit of a month.
We said a big month, May.
I think it's kind of this shock of everybody getting the news, everybody understanding that kind of this tremendous, for lack of a better term, fuck up has happened. And now what are we going to do? Is it going to be an isolated incident? Can we make amends? They don't want us to have guns anymore. And they have soldiers trying to seize armories. That's why Lexington and Concord happened. And what would become the Americans or the colonials, but at this point the rebels are no, we're not gonna disarm ourselves, because so clearly every time you make up a new law or a new thing to punish us, you enforce it with an iron fist.
Right.
Quartering soldiers in homes, impressment in the military and navy, all these different practices that are super terrible.
They seem pejorative. So they're essentially they're taking what they think are colonial citizens of the empire and impressing them and putting them in the Navy and the Army or whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
To sort of take the teeth out of the revolution, of the Revolutionary War.
Exactly.
Is it working?
No.
Does it? No, it did. Well, we know, hindsight, it did not work. But how many people are they grabbing?
Well, they were grabbing anyone they could. They were trying to round up rebels, but they're outnumbered. They're awaiting reinforcements. Their supplies are dwindling. And now, violence has broken out in a way that's like, could this violence spread? We have to crush it. And the center of it all is coming from Boston, whether, they want to admit that or not, because Lexington and Concord, the armories were way out of the city, but all the leaders and the symbolism of the town is all right there.
Right.
So what they need to do is they decide, why don't we get our worst generals together and crush this revolution together?
How many British troops are in New England at this time?
I think
do you know?
Approximately 10,000.
Okay.
And militia, you've only got 67 at Lexington, and then you've got thousands more at Concord that show up because the surrounding towns and ragtag groups, and it becomes this turkey shoot back to Boston for the British military on the retreat, which is so unheard of and insane that just a bunch of people who were not in the military just kicked the greatest military's ass in the world.
Wow.
So there's some planning to be done.
On the British side.
Exactly.
Or on both sides. Okay.
You got William Howe, who is, I'd say worse generals. They weren't the best, but they were pretty smart. You have Clinton, you have Thomas Gage, Henry Clinton, William Howe, Thomas Gage, and Gentleman John Burgoyne, who's one of my favorite villains in history because he's so weird.
And his name is Gentleman John.
Gentleman Johnny.
Who named Who on earth is Gentleman John Is he a British officer? Is that his jam?
Yes, he's a British officer / aspiring playwright, and he decides during the siege. We'll get into this. I want to keep it in the timeline, but his playwriting comes up in a very fun way.
That is outstanding. All right,
so
Gentleman John.
You've got these pretty smart guys. They're listening to Lieutenant Thomas Gage, and they realize the vulnerability of Boston, because of geography, is that it's an island. And they are surrounded if the militias can organize. So what they need to start doing is securing the harbor at certain islands around Boston, and securing high points, because supplies can't come in if you've got a high point, gun aimed right at it. Even though it can't reach, all the guns can't reach the boats. No, But
it's just intimidating enough that people are like, we're not coming in.
yeah, say if the island,
interesting.
If the island is far off from Boston and your reinforcements are coming in, but that island could send troops away to attack the ship and destroy everything you've been waiting for a year, or capture it and use it, you're screwed.
Right.
In a harbor that is very tricky to navigate. So the first thing that happens in May that's really kind of like brushed on the rug is the Battle of Hog Island. This is pre-Bunker Hill.
Okay, 2 G's? Hog Island?
2 G's. Hog Island and Noodle Island.
Who gets to name islands? What's happening? What's happened?
There was, I think it is like John Smith naming some of the islands, but some of these maps, it's hard to say who has what. But the Snake Island looks like a snake. Noodle Island was owned by a man named Noodle.
Right, because there weren't a lot of noodles. I mean, it wasn't like Asian, the spaghetti and the Italian and the Asian noodle had really. I mean, it's. I know there used to be an open mic over at the Chinese food restaurant over off of Harvard Square, but
it would come much later.
It would come much later.
The noodle community Island settled in Boston in the 1860s. This is Hog Island, livestock. Noodle Island, hay. You've got Grape Island near Weymouth, where I grew up, is one of these islands that's just. It's kind of out of the way, but it could keep if invasions came from the south, you could have a little spot there. So when you think of Boston, you don't think of 34 different islands to manage. Most people don't even know that they have one island.
No, I didn't. I knew that there was an island of garbage in the harbor. I heard about that one time.
Spectacle Island, which was a colonial Vegas until it was shut down by the Puritans. Oh. I swear to God.
Oh, good Lord.
It used to be a party island. And meaning that you could dance with a woman you weren't married to, Jackie.
Well, slow your roll, non-Puritans. We're going to shut that down.
It was not going well in the securing of Boston Harbor, because you've got these generals trying to strategically send out points to get secured, and whoever they're sending out is not completing the mission. Like I said, it's a tricky harbor to navigate. Hog Island, Noodle Island, a boat of theirs, a very good boat for the British Empire, gets run ashore because of low tide and poor navigation, and they just they swim up to it and blow it up. And now you've lost. They
lose a decent boat.
Yes, they didn't get supplies. They didn't secure the island, and they just lost a ship. In a basically gosh. Like a water, we're in a water-based war right now, and it's the one that they could win.
It's the one that they're good at.
Yes,
that they're known for.
You would see them express that in the War of 1812. That's how they won a lot of the war. It was like, let's just do what we do. Go on the boats.
Right. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
we're boat people. Okay, go.
So
they got ships.
They screw up these little securing spots, and they decide, all right, we are sitting ducks now because we can't seem to get a handle on the high ground, and we need to make a stand north of the harbor. North of Boston is Charlestown, and the shape of Charlestown is very much like it's almost like a fist. It's called like the Boston neck. And the idea being, in Charlestown, there are 3 hills, Morton, Breeds, and Bunker Hill. The taller one is Breeds. The taller one is Bunker, excuse me. But the colonials reinforced Breeds because they didn't want to climb the taller hill. It shows...
classic American lazy Civil War business. All right.
There's going to be a lot of those mistakes where it's like, they're fighting a war, but I feel like both sides are both going to reason with, like, what's the worst that could happen? They're just not taking it seriously to the degree that...
this is fascinating.
Yeah.
Because they're not taking it seriously. People are going to die.
Yeah.
They're not... Yeah.
It's...
Okay.
This is a very important thing to secure. You can cut them off one way completely. And
if you get this, if you do this right.
If you get it. And on the British side, Gage and them decide, okay, we're going to strategize. How are we going to land there? Let's pick one of the hottest months. Let's go at the hottest time of the day and wear the brightest red uniforms that you can think of.
And what is the hottest month and day?
June 17th, 1775 is like a 90-degree day.
Oh, wow.
And British soldiers don't go light. They call it like fast and ready or something. They gear up for an invasion of like another country. They bring all their gear. They pile it on their backs and they start rowing out to Charlestown at like 1 p.m. And you have to, cross a river. That's a lot of labor. And then you're going to land, and then you're going to march up a hill. So you've just done 2 hours of rowing in your heavy wool. They have another disadvantage. They always love to point this out. British soldiers are in that bright red, and their gear is by a white strap that goes across here is usually like their powder and ball, and then across here, bayonets to fix or water. So you have a big white X on a big red background.
Shoot me.
Yeah.
Right there. It's like that's why my dad was like, he didn't want to go to Vietnam because he was a medic. And he's like, there's a big X on my helmet. Yeah. That's exactly where they're going to shoot, where that nice target is.
Yeah.
So they had a big X on their
chest.
On their chest. And if you could hit anywhere near there, you're going to do some damage.
Exactly. So as they advance to the island and they're getting hotter, and they've got about 2,000 plus troops under William Howe, they had several options on how to land this. They could have gone around the island, shelled it from the front, which they were doing.
Sure.
They were blowing up the town. Imagine your lovely little quiet town that you're living in, your wooden home, and it's all on fire. Yeah. It's all ablaze. They shelled.
They're just like, okay.
Yeah.
They shelled just a town.
Yeah. This is where
because
why not? Why not show force? Is like
right, and you can't tell the rebels from the It's women and children from the soldiers. The soldiers might be hiding in the houses. Mm-hmm. It's the excuse of war forever to kill non-combatants.
Yeah.
Yes. It is same excuse 240 years ago.
Yeah.
250 years ago.
The ends justify the means. One of those.
Yes. Are we going to win? Yes.
So the town, if anybody wasn't on the rebel side before, they might have switched sides.
At June 18th.
Yes. What they could have done, and it was a risk, but they didn't do it. They could have shelled the town like they did, landed behind the hill, and trapped them between, their navy and
the incoming troops.
The risk being somebody would have to cross from behind to flank them, and they would be caught between two militaries. So they didn't want to risk it. Gage was like, just go for a head-on assault. What's the worst that could happen? They'll run.
That's why they're called enlisted men. That's so sad.
Yeah.
Did they lose?
It's a bloodbath. It's a win.
It's a bloodbath.
It's a win, but it's a loss in that Colonials spent all night digging in. So they gave them extra time to fortify the hill. There are all different types of people fighting up on top of the hill, but there's a badass from New Hampshire. The motto "Live Free or Die" comes from him, John Stark.
John Stark.
It's one of these heroes that you don't hear thrown around much. He and a group of like 200 men from New Hampshire heard of Lexington and Concord, ran from New Hampshire to Boston, and then they would switch between jumping on different shores of Charlestown to fend off a nautical landing at certain points. Just 200 guys against cannons.
Just running back against cannons and then just sort of making their presence known in different places so the British didn't know how many there were, maybe? Or?
Yes, distraction, preventing mass landing, putting them in a way that they had to confront the redoubt, as they called it, this dug-in fort on Breed's Hill, at the worst point for them. You're basically funneling the soldiers up to a big open line where no one can hide. And
they're all marching in a row like a band anyway, a marching band going up the hill.
Yeah. Why not? Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you with your big targets on your chests?
What am I?
And
I mean, they look professional. That's what they're hoping is, the ships will scare the shit out of these people. They'll run backwards. They'll surrender and all this stuff. Look at us with our bayonets and everything.
Intimidation.
Exactly.
So they were trying to intimidate a bunch of squirrel hunters who were like, well, why don't we just shoot them from the bushes? Mm-hmm. I assume, right?
Yes.
Like, it's not like our guys lined up, right? No. We didn't line up and march at them.
We're behind in like primitive looking foxholes, hills. They've put stuff along the hill going upwards. So as the British soldiers try to climb, they aren't like together. It's splitting them up, but putting them in front of the weapons that are, waiting behind walls.
Well, here's my question, Gary Petersen, comedy Gary P., who has a new album out called Yellow Belt Confidence. Here's my question. So we win. I mean, spoiler alert: the United States is created when we win the Revolutionary War.
Yes,
and then we start using those same techniques that the British used that they lost with, and use it in our own Civil War.
Yes.
To march in blocks at each other and pew, 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 and 1,000 million people die in that one. What a dumb, why wouldn't we, hey, we had an idea. It was hide behind shit and shoot them.
Yeah. It was,
so
I think because of a strange code of war in the etiquette of war is you stand and you fight. To do things behind, that's not to say that the both sides don't have snipers and artillery, because there's snipers picking off soldiers that are rowing in. There's a lot of immaturity on the American side. It's shown when they dig in all night. They make a great thing, and they have this rough cannon that they're gonna shoot at the soldiers as they get closer. But they didn't make a hole for it. So there's just a wall and they have a cannon. So they decide, well, why don't we just use the cannon to make the hole? So they shoot their own wall and then shove a cannon through it. And they're like, all right, this works. It's
oh my God,
a lot of craziness. There's a guy who was eventually would be struck by lightning. James Otis.
James Otis struck by lightning.
Not on that day, but he came up with taxation without representation is tyranny. Crazy old James Otis. Okay. He then got beat in the head from a tax collector years later and had a lead plate, most likely, or something, or brain damage. Who knows?
Right.
And they were like, give this guy a gun. Why not? So he's there. You've got Joseph Warren, who's a little guy who is a big hero. He's like a hometown hero. Dr. Warren is like everybody's friend. People love him. He's a patriot. He's outspoken, but he's not like in the way that Sam Adams is outspoken. He's very politely outspoken. So people respect and stand with him. And he's like, I may be the general, but I'm just another soldier here to fight. That's going to be why the monument is there. It's not just the battle. It's really because of him and his spirit showing up that night, invigorating people to dig in without, food or water, and saying that we can take them, we can form a plan. And the idea from William Prescott and the famous line, he doesn't invent this, don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes.
Okay.
That
he didn't come up with that. He just repeated something. It's like, this is a great idea. Let's wait until they're close enough that you're going to see them.
It's in 16th century Scottish warfare. It's in the English book. It's in a lot of texts. It's just basically your weapon isn't that good.
Right.
Don't waste.
You have a shitty ranged weapon. And who knows what your eyesight is like with that shitty ranged weapon.
It's scary to think that at this time, most battles are just going to be people stabbing each other with the end of their rifles. That's how they're won or lost. It's not the bullets.
Wow.
It
isn't.
You have a 1 in 8 chance your weapon doesn't even go off. Men have, and men don't even have, and if it's damp, you're screwed. That's why there's rainouts for war. You have limited weapons. People are handed powder and ball, just kind of passing along, but each rifle is different, and this bullet may not go for your rifle. So overnight, these guys are reshaping their own bullets to fit their guns that are for like squirrel hunting or protecting the farm. So this is just like a homemade war, but it shows the commitment of one side standing against the greatest military power in the world.
Yeah.
As that power comes up the hill, 90% of them are cut down in the first firing. They retreat. And what would you do if you were a commander in this situation? If you just lost about 90% of the guys you sent up the hill?
Right. Like, essentially, you're talking about 1,800 out of 2,000 men. Is that what I'm...
They sent them in waves. So out of 2,000, this first wave of about 400,
there's like 40 left.
Yeah, that aren't wounded or just dead.
Right, that aren't just lying on that hill or dead. I'd assume that I would double down if I were the British. Is that what he did?
Oh, yeah.
Is that what they did?
Oh, God. I would adjust my strategy, but that's what they did. They just decided, well, this didn't work, so let's do it again. Exact same route, exact same space, exact same amount of men, and 90% of them are cut down, wounded, or killed. So now 800 cannot fight.
Yes. Right. Now you have 1,200 guys. Some of them aren't even soldiers. Yeah. Some of them are like the guys that haul shit or are the medics, I assume, or
new recruits,
whatever.
People that have just arrived, plenty of people who don't want to be in Boston. And it's just this last siege, the only way they take the hill is kind of a reoccurring problem that's going to happen again and again. The militia runs out of ammo, so they are able to kill a lot of them on the third siege, but
because hand to hand, like essentially you're like you have to get close enough to beat them to death.
Yes,
because they've run out of ammunition,
and that's what's happening. You've got Prescott saying fall back as they could have been cut off at this point. This would have been a good point to send your ship around to the rear and cut them off from retreating and going to Cambridge, but you didn't time the tides right, so they couldn't cut. You could have ended the war on Bunker Hill, in my opinion, if you cut them off and you showed that brute force and you killed them all. I don't think anyone would have fought back against the British Empire.
It might have ended it there.
But they let them retreat. Dr. Joseph Warren stands with his men on the hill, is struck down horribly. He gets not only shot in the heart, but bayoneted by 3 men and is buried in like a huge mass grave. It's very tragic. Side note to that, though. Paul Revere was an amateur dentist. I don't know if I mentioned that among many things. And for some reason, his doctor, Dr. Joseph Warren, was like, why don't you just, muddle around in my mouth? And Paul Revere, for a short while, did like dental work of repairing. I think it was like wire teeth with copper to hold them in. He does Dr. Joseph Warren's tooth. Years go by before they can actually look at the hill and get, proper burials. And Paul Revere's like, I can recognize my dental work. And they identify Dr. Joseph Warren based off Paul Revere's weird dentistry.
Oh my God. Who was the dentist in the Christmas? Anyway, that's who I picture with the voice you just did. It's like
Kirby.
the guy in Rudolph. Kirby. Yeah, Rudolph. Paul Revere as Kirby is outstanding.
So
Yes.
they lose half their men. So out of 2,000, 1,000 British soldiers are wounded or killed, cannot continue in war. Some have deserted, and
Right, some have just bailed.
they're just like, this is fucking nuts. These people are crazy. But they took the hill and killed Dr. Joseph Warren and showed strength. So it's technically a win.
Right.
They really don't understand the long game here, which is supplies and time. It's going to take time for that message to get back to England, more troops to arrive with more force. They've secured north of Boston, but in order to get anything to Boston, you got to come south. And there's open islands, there's a lot of space, and nobody knows what's going on up here from, right as you could enter into Boston Harbor. What was the oldest lighthouse in the country? I think it's still there operating. Boston Light is this lighthouse where it's like your supplies would have to pass this point. It's the one point to enter in. And that becomes a on and off blown up thing. Colonists try to blow it up. The British, as they're leaving, are saying, fuck you, and they blow it up. It is, and it's survived a lot of that, but that island has a little bit of fighting on it. The soldiers are stuck in Boston. They've secured Bunker Hill. The rebels are in Cambridge, out near Harvard, where the soon-to-be open mic at a Chinese food restaurant in Harvard Square would be.
Right. That's going to be so great. I got a free T-shirt.
It's Rick Jenkins, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know what he's at. Where's he at? What's he doing?
I think he's laying low, trying virtual shows.
Yeah, good for him. All right, never mind. Okay, go ahead.
So now you've got a bunch of troops who just got their ass kicked, who are now scared, and you've got word of the greatest military power in the world just sent 2,000 men up a hill and only 1,000 are left. I don't think that's a victory.
Yeah.
It shows that we could fight. The only reason we lost is because we didn't have the ammo. So,
right, we didn't have enough ammo.
And we weren't organized.
All right.
The Continental Congress in Philadelphia, the Second Continental Congress, had met in May and right after Lexington and Concord, and they had decided, let's put Washington involved in all this. So he arrives in Cambridge eventually, and it is a nightmare during this siege time. This is people from Pennsylvania that are snipers because they have threaded rifles. They're like, we're in charge. And Boston's like, no, I'm in charge. This is my town. And guys from New Hampshire are like, I was at Bunker Hill. No, I'm in charge. Nobody's united. Nobody cares.
Right.
And they're
just arguing.
It's a mess. Washington has his work cut out for him. He's already a failed general from the French and Indian War.
Right. Well, hit and miss. But he has the advantage of being very tall, if I remember correctly.
He looks the part.
He looks real good in a uniform. He's Harry Flashman personified. Let's bring this guy. And
I think he sees potential, and he starts to drill in, Harvard. He evacuates all the students out, and he's like, "No, this is my place now." Every day, as the spy networks start to get out every day, there's new weird information that's scary or bizarre. But just on top of that, at what would be the Longfellow House, where Henry Wadsworth Longfellow would live in, is the Washington headquarters. Still a site you can visit. Almost every day, they would fire a cannon at Washington's headquarters from across the harbor, and it would never
just to hope it.
Yeah, it would land, 200 yards away, but it was a clear thing to show, well, we know where you are, sir, and we're ready.
Yeah.
So they're drilling in Cambridge. They're whipping into shape. It's not going well. Washington is concerned that there are too many.
They need that German guy who was gay.
Yes.
That's what they need. Yeah.
Is it Baron von Steuben?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's going to come.
But he doesn't come in years later,
Yes.
right? We're talking at least 3 or 4 years from now. So they're just sort of all just lining up and is George Washington himself trying to drill these guys?
Yes. He lays out code.
Okay.
He lays out, if you retreat, I will shoot you. If, you're going to stand in line, you're going to report to me. He dresses down people that think they're in charge. He's like, nah, I am. He wants action. He wants approval from the Continental Congress, but they're like, maybe we should think about this. So there's a lot of nothing happening, just little skirmishes, little things.
And this is all through the summer.
Through the summer, there's still a lot of inaction. They realize by the time the message from Boston gets to England and then can come back will be probably next winter. So they can roll on it. So they have almost the summer to plan and drill. As the winter comes in, like I said before, if it's damp or whatever, your weapon's screwed. So they kind of take a timeout on any sort of siege or action, which is good for the colonists.
Right. Oh, so the British are like, we're just gonna we're going to go make a cup of tea and a little fire and try to dry all of our bits.
Yeah.
And you guys go take it, bring in the harvest, stock up, we'll re-siege again.
Yeah. It's
after the rainy season.
Well, it's like Major League Baseball. You don't play it in the winter.
My God.
And
that's nuts.
As they're waiting, the advantage goes to colonists. They are not on an island. They can get things like food.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they can use sneakery, go out into the woods, and they can hunt and they can harvest and they can do and that's where they live.
Yes.
So they know everybody. Weird.
So morale in Boston for British soldiers is just crushed. They didn't want to be there anyways. They hated it. And this is where one of my favorite moments happens. Gentleman John Burgoyne in January of 1776.
January 76. Okay.
He decides, I'm going to put on my play. And the play, I believe, was called The Siege of Boston. There's no record of this play other than it's making fun of the colonists. There's a character named George Washington who's got a dumb head and a rusty sword. And where are they going to put it on? Why not this symbolic place, Faneuil Hall? This is where the Sons of Liberty launched the Tea Party from. This is where, a lot of colonial significance was. And people in the town that are remaining, that are starving, that are eating rats, literally, are saying, maybe you shouldn't put this. This is kind of bad. It's not a nice thing to do. Maybe you shouldn't be a jerk.
Wait, the British were eating rats?
Yes.
Because the colonials, they're all having like roast pig because they're being fed. Okay, so his own men and his own garrison of whatever because these are all. So there are British soldiers who are essentially lodging in private homes all over Boston.
Yeah, on Boston
because they've
Common,
taken over Boston.
Taken homes, kick people out of their homes. Okay. It's not a good situation, and they don't have the supplies just aren't there. And they decide they're going to put this dumb play on. And this is like, because of the spy networks being so open and free, they know this play is going to start like curtains up at, I think, like 9 p.m.
Places.
We've got 5. Thank you, 5. Across where Bunker Hill was, they had removed troops from and put like a little outpost. And don't you want to go to a play? Doesn't everybody want to go to the play? They abandoned the outpost with 2 guys.
They leave a skeleton crew at the outpost.
So everyone's at this dumb play. At the moment of 9, the play starts, and the outpost is attacked and firebombed, and not kept, just prisoners captured. And it was a beautiful strategy. My favorite part is that Faneuil Hall was on the water at the time. They could see that part of town from backstage. One of the soldiers comes to the front of the stage and says, the militia is attacking in Charlestown. And everyone in the audience is like, this is such an interesting play. They just sit there. And they watch this guy.
Because it's about the siege of Boston, so they think it's part of the play. Oh my God.
They sit there and they're just looking at this guy. They're like, I thought this was a comedy. And he's like, I'm not. He like tore his wig off and he's like, this is not. And they all like it's like a Three Stooges moment. They bash into each other and they get outside and it's already gone. And these are like the first like captured prisoners of war. You've taken back that little thing that Bunker Hill was, so now you have the high ground there. So all you really got to do is cut off the bottom part of the harbor. We need big guns to do that, not to reach anybody, but just to stop ships. We turn to, of course, overweight bookseller who would die of a chicken wound, Henry Knox.
Chicken wound? What? Henry Knox died of a what? Was he pecked to death? What happened?
He ate a chicken bone and got an infection in his throat and then died.
Wow. And this is the guy that... Didn't he go to Ticonderoga and hump?
Exactly. He went to New York, Fort Ticonderoga, secured by Ethan Allen, the Green Mountain Boys, as well as Benedict Arnold, and takes and drags these cannons back from there to free Boston. So Washington is going to get these cannons by Knox, who was the only one that said he could do it. And everybody's like, you're a bookseller. What the fuck do you know?
He's a book nerd. He's read all the military books. He knows all about strategy. Strategy is how it was pronounced. Strategy. And so him and like his cousin or somebody. What was it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
They dragged like 700 tons or something like that. They lose no cannons.
They lose no cannons.
And it was a mild winter that year from 75 into 76. So they had sleds and they were ready to like, oh, this will be easy. The snow will make us sled it. But no. So they're just dragging it through mud and dirt. But they get the cannons there. Washington's very impressed. Now we've got the tools. We've got a rough enough military. We don't have... It would be about 75 artillery pieces that we can place if we can get underneath Boston to what would be the Dorchester Heights. In order to do that, we have to distract from the north. We're going to shell the city from Lechmere, from across the river, from Charlestown, and that's going to provide distraction there. And they cover their wagons in hay. They have the cannons on the wagons. It's silent movement as they get up to the hill. And when the British soldiers wake up, I think it was of March 1776, I think Clinton was there at the time, says, the soldiers have done more in one night than my whole military has done in a year.
Because they dragged the stuff, and I'm literally, here's what's about to happen here. I'm sharing a screen, my friend. I'm sharing a screen. So where are we? What is happening? Who are these people?
See on the bottom right, Dorchester Flats. That
oh wait, this sort of thing over here?
Yes.
Is that an island?
Just off Cattle Island and Dorchester Flats. They can set up their weapons there. And all the Boston Harbor, all the British soldiers are
I got Castle Island. I got is it this?
Yeah. Dorchester Point.
Okay. Yeah. So from there, they can shoot like that way? Is that what's happening?
The ship would
Rangers
would have
tell me you're watching at minute 40 on YouTube, because otherwise you're like, well, I don't know. Okay.
It's
Go ahead.
this route where your cursor is, right near where that compass is.
Yeah.
That line is the only line into the harbor with any ships. So if you control Dorchester Flats, you can cut it off. You can shell the ship if it's close enough. You can launch a blockade.
So nobody comes in from the north up here. Nobody comes in through this.
It's impossible because of
Oh,
the way
hello.
the land is. The reefs, just it's the narrows, as they called it. They didn't understand it then, but as I understood it when I was in the Park Service, it was like only a little within a certain 40-minute window of a day that you could really get through with a boat.
Okay. All
So
right.
a little risky.
Right. They learned 100 years later. So, but now we're in March of 1776.
Yes, this is nearing the end. We've got Dorchester Heights secured. Remember I said 75, 80 pieces of artillery? When they look over there, this is one of my favorite moments, and it just is like such a cool part of American history. They see like 150 cannons, and they see lots of men positioned and ready. They didn't get more cannons. They made dummies and fake cannons.
Oh, they just sort of wood.
Yeah.
They just took wood and posts and made things that look kind of like cannons.
Yes, kind of like a Three Amigos situation. And
Yeah.
they were They were like, how did they get so many cannons? They didn't. They just did not.
They didn't. They have 75, but they don't have 300.
They decided.
Wow.
It's now like clear. We're surrounded. Our supplies we were waiting all year for after this brutal winter where we're just slowly bleeding. People are deserting. They tried to wage biological warfare, potentially.
Who did?
The British on the American Continental soldiers.
With what?
The
whole wasn't little people weren't washing their hands at all in 1775. If you were alive, you would sort of beaten all the. What did they try to do?
Smallpox, I believe. Smallpox could still take out quite a few people, and there were reports from Washington from spies that said that had like deserted the British military, saying, hey, just so you know, they're going to send people to try to join you that have smallpox to try to wipe you out. And he's like, these are in some letters that he writes back to the Continental Congress. And he's like, I don't know, maybe. He doesn't really give it much pause, which in the middle of a pandemic makes you think.
Yeah, exactly. No kidding. You're just like, of course I'm not going to wear a mask. So what about, wow. Okay. So what's happening in Philadelphia during this time?
They are getting updates within like 2 or 3 days of action, but they realized that Boston now could be that tipping point of the rest of the 13 colonies to show, after a year of fighting, if we can liberate this town, if we can make this work with the army we literally just formed, everybody else is going to be on board. There's not going to be any loyalists anymore.
Okay.
Especially when tales of, the harassment and devastation of the town of Boston, when these soldiers are kicked out, you're going to see how crappy the town had, been treated and looked and destroyed.
Right.
It was under cannon fire siege, but, this could happen to you is going to start being spread.
It should unify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the Continental Congress gets word that the British soldiers, they were going to go up a hill. They were going to try to take Dorchester Heights, but thank God for snow in New England, because it snowed in March of that year.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, this is just fucked. We can't do it. It's just too costly. Our weapons wouldn't even work. It would be bayonet. And because it's a hill, the Americans had taken rum barrels with chains and were ready to just throw them down the hill at them. Like,
oh, wow.
Just,
like Donkey Kong?
Exactly.
Like Donkey Kong,
This is where Donkey Kong came from.
Just going to throw barrels at you, and then you have to dodge them. Okay.
So they reach an agreement, and the British soldiers agree not to destroy the entire town of Boston. They are allowed to leave the harbor and go past, Boston's light, so they have to evacuate the city. It was just that simple. It's like, if you don't destroy the town.
That's a big loss.
Yes.
That's a big loss.
You lost one of the biggest import, ports of the entire colonies. You lost the town that's been fighting you this whole time has won. That's a huge moral loss for your side, and a big moral victory for us. You've also shown your weaknesses, which is money, supplies, and time. It takes so much time for word to travel and so much time for it to come back. So, the next game is going to be New York, but Boston lays out, a little bit of that potential that we could reach. So they evacuate. Evacuation day is March 17th, 1776, which is also St. Patty's Day. That's how we get away with celebrating
it. Is there, are there any Irish in Boston in 1776?
Yeah. The Catholic surge wouldn't come along till later, but there are plenty of mixture of
Protestant Irish that have showed up. Fair enough.
And you've got the first town free in the American Revolution. You have this military surrendering, and it's like, holy shit. And this is March. We're still not going to declare independence until July.
Right.
So we're still not all on the same.
We all know that one. July 4th, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It seems to be a big date. So what happens in between? Now, we're at 50. You have 10 minutes.
Okay.
You have 10 minutes to explain to me what happens in June and July. Because it's not that I haven't seen the musical 1776 with the guy who was the voice from Kit the Car. I have seen that. The guy who was the neighbor on Magnum P.I. I am talking like Brody Stevens. I have seen that. I have seen Hamilton. Twice in the theater, listened to the album 1,000 times. I read Gore Vidal's Burr. So these are things. This is the info. Oh, and I've read
McCullough?
The History of Lafayette by Sarah Vowell. And so what happens? What happens next?
As word spreads, this is almost like a pause on action, because the British run with their tail between their legs. Boston comes back, re-inhabits the area. Of course, the agreement was don't destroy the town, but just so happens that Samuel Adams' house happened to be trashed, and all the leaders' homes, John Hancock's mansion, trashed. Paul Revere wasn't known that well by them, so his house is okay.
So his dental chair still in effect.
He actually sent his sons back there to maintain his house across enemy lines. It's so stupid and so terrible, but
oh, what a goof!
What a weird dad with 16 kids.
16 kids. Paul Revere had 16 children.
His wife.
Paul Revere's wife had 16 children. And was he killed by a chicken bone? How did Paul Revere die?
Old age.
Just lying in state, surrounded by his family, no doubt. A hero.
Sarah and Rachel, 8 kids apiece, but he died fine.
Wow.
But the town is being rebuilt, and this is where it's like a regrouping of, we now need to make the statement that we are a nation of our own, and it's going to take this amount of time for the Continental Congress to pull everybody through that, the join or die thought is like, we have to hang together, or we're not, we can't hang separately.
Or we will hang separately.
Exactly.
Yes. It's I have been I actually own the musical 1776. I may watch it after this episode.
I've never seen it. I should see it.
You've never seen it?
No.
Oh, there's an amazing song of Virginia to Massachusetts called Rum or Slaves or something like that. And it's Who Stinketh Most. And it is a very, let's see. Deep deep bop deep deep boop. Okay, 1776 musical song list. There we go. These are the things that I wish to Google, you guys. Molasses to Rum. And it's essentially, it's about who's, and one of the lines is who stinketh most. Because Massachusetts is like, well, slavery has to be in the Declaration of Independence. And Virginia's like, who makes money after the slaves drop off? I think they're your shipping lines, aren't they?
Yeah.
You're the big giant jackasses. You don't have a not place in this, your bills are paid by human slavery as well.
Yeah.
So it's a great, but it actually is a very, it's essentially the Music Man of American history. So know in your hearts that it's no Hamilton, but it is indeed, parts of it are very good.
The one of the big things too, I keep saying one of the big things, shoot me in the face. One of the missing elements that, we need to expand history, that's without a doubt to show different sides of it. Washington was not comfortable with blacks in the military at that time. He wrote to the Continental Congress concerned, and he referred to these free men as slaves. And then he starts training with them, and now you have it would be the most integrated military until the Civil War, because it was, I think, through this warfare that they started to maybe not see total equality, because that's just too, I think.
Right. They essentially they're like, oh, this is an able-bodied stock of meat who can hold a gun and has a brain. Let's not bother with his sausage casing, which is a new bit that I'm working on. That we're all just stalks of meat with a brain on top. Gary Petersen. By the way, I am talking with Gary Petersen. Everyone should know that it's Comedy Gary P on Instagram and Twitter. He has a new album out called Yellow Belt Confidence. And he was the one who came up with the idea of my ally bit about Godzilla. So there you go. Gary Petersen, you guys find him. Listen to the album. Okay.
Thank you. I just tagged it. You're the genius behind it.
I don't know about that. Let's but okay. Mutual Admiration Society. So they were so Washington is allowing these an integrated army to some extent.
Integrated military and pulling in anyone he can. He realizes desertion is going to be the big problem of holding people there, because you have no money. This is a war of faith that
you can't pay anybody.
Yeah, you've gotten gig pitches like this where it's like, hey, Jackie, we got this gig. We don't know when it's going to end. It's going to go on forever, and we're making our own money off it, but we'll let you know when we can pay you. It's like, you'd be a crazy person to take that. But many of those fighting are like, it could be my farm destroyed, could be my family cut down and killed. The British soldiers were infamous around the world for being just bastards. Nova Scotia, around when they occupied territory, they were burning people's homes, and maybe it wasn't all true, but that reputation made people scared enough to say, you know what, I'll fight, I'll wait for pay on the chance that I don't have to live in this fear for the rest of my life. I have no choice.
And some of these people, it's kind of like ice fishing, where they're like, well, I don't want to go home. I can hang out with a bunch of dudes, and I don't know, we're going to eat hardtack with weevils in it. But other than that, there might be a free beer. And
definitely Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys. They're definitely of that.
That vibe. Great.
I think the symbolism of this year not only draws what would become the nation into a focus, but it shows the enemy of my enemy as an ally, shows the French as, we don't even have to fight a war with these guys we've been fighting with forever. We can bleed them even more because they're in financial ruin from the French and Indian War and the colonists never paying back that money. So why don't we contribute to this? And they just start sending, commanders like Lafayette. They start sending Baron von Steuben and people that actually had brilliant strategy, method behind the madness. They looked at Boston Harbor, which was stupidly left vulnerable from the evacuation. They came to Boston, and then they just did not fortify hills around the city. They just thought, well, they'll never be back.
Oh my God!
So
they left. Why would we have to make sure they stay out?
Yeah, Lafayette went around, and George's Island is one of the first that he's like, you have to dig in here and there, and if any ship comes any which way, now you don't have to send anyone out. You can just lean back and fire shells at them all day long. And they're like, okay.
Right. He's 19. Let's listen to him. And
this is the year that I think the rest of the Union joins the cause.
Okay.
The next game is going to be a more strategic point because New York is the center of the trade of the Americas. It's got more significance. It's got more loyalists. This is where we don't have time to get into New York. It's just too much. But it is.
But go ahead.
You're going to see an inexperienced military show its colors in New York.
Right. Because the British have doubled. They're sending real troops now. Mm-hmm. They're sending real numbers.
Yes.
Real boatloads of humans. Soldiers, ships full of soldiers are coming.
Yes.
And the Americans are just going, well, okay, let's all be Americans. We're gonna do this. Mm-hmm. This is happening. And Washington is trying to drill troops, but he doesn't really have when does the aid come before July, or does it when do the British show up in New York?
They evacuate Boston, and I think some ships go to New York and some go back to England to let the news happen, and figure out, re-strategize. And some commanders are now going to be shuffled around and new ones added. Cornwallis is going to be entering the picture, who is, a genius. And it's not going to be easy from here on. It's not going to be too many of those underestimating my enemy mistakes, which led to all this fucking up.
Right. He's not going to make the same mistakes of Gage and Gentleman John. Mm-hmm. Whatever happened to Gentleman John?
Well, his play didn't go so well, and he continued to fight.
The critics just murdered him. Anyway.
Jackie Cation, you just broke the backboard. That was great. I think he dies during the war. One of those nightmarish. Can we look this up for a second? Because I forget.
Yeah, we got it. Right. So they come. So when all the troops come back to New York, that's when the war. That's when I think Boston really realizes who they're fighting. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, now we have to figure out how to actually fight a war. And because we don't have, they send something like 100,000 troops, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or how many? Yeah. And we only have 20 guys, right? We still have
we got about 14,000.
Okay.
But they're going to start sending waves and waves and waves, and the might of the empire in numbers and naval strength is going to show. We have home field advantage, but we're going to screw that up.
He dies. Yeah, we John Burgoyne, by the way, dies in his bed at the age of 70 in 1792, 4 years after the war.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
So which means that in 76, how old was he in 76? See, so he's in his 50s.
50s, yeah.
Yeah, so he's in his 50s during the war. Should be his prime time to be, I don't know, writing the great American novel, obviously.
Yeah.
Trying to write the great plays.
Yeah.
But this is a time when, like, British military is bought commissions, right? I mean, these are you can get promotions if you have cash to give the crown,
Which is a great system.
an enormously good system. Everyone should definitely follow that rich guy because his dad has money. You should totally listen to that guy because his dad had some money to buy him a real nice horse.
Yeah. You know the guy who failed in Ireland and the French and Indian War? Let's give him another job.
Another job with a lot of men to just send to their death. And wow, that is brutal. So when you come back, Gary Petersen, because it has been an hour, we will discuss the Declaration of Independence. We will talk New York.
And the Sly Fox Washington strategy that will develop to win the war, which is retreat. Bleed them dry.
Retreat.
We don't need to hold any position. We just need to keep them eating and eating up their supplies, moving about, being confused, and we'll win this war.
And we'll wait them out.
Yeah.
This is an interesting strategy. I think that revolutions have used it since then, I think.
Oh, yes.
Even against the United States of America, I should imagine.
Probably.
Vietnam comes to mind. Afghanistan and the Russians, and Afghanistan and the British, and Afghanistan and the Americans. Afghanistan comes to mind, is what I'm telling you.
We're still there.
We're still there, you guys. All right. This has been, as per usual, a delight. Got to have you back a little bit quicker. I say we're going to be in quarantine for some time. So Gary Petersen, you guys, Comedy Gary P at Instagram and Twitter. Yellow Belt Confidence.
Yes.
Now, everywhere you listen to a comedy album, feel free to listen to Gary Petersen's comedy album. It's called Yellow Belt Confidence. And thank you so much for doing the show. And Rangers, you know the rules out there. Take care of each other.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?